Survival priorities. They go hand in hand with our needs, obviously, as humans. But what about the techniques or the mind frames, theories, if you will, of survival? The philosophies of survival. So basically, we all know we need air to live, just as we need shelter to help regulate our core body temperatures, water to stay hydrated so we can have normal body functioning, food so we have energy and clarity and morale boost, safety and security to keep our bodies from, incurring any type of harm from various threats, and to rescue. It could be your self-rescue, or maybe you're relying on outside forces. You need rest. You need the ability to recoup and for your body to help rebuild itself and recoup in terms of just bodily functions that happen during our restfulness. And, sometimes we don't put a lot of priority on rest, but, you go for a couple of days without sleep, you're going to be like a zombie. So you need to have rest. Hopelessness, that's something that can be deadly. And we need to be mindful about how we approach various topics in our head, how we approach things in general in our life, but especially in a survival situation. Our morale is key. The will to live is really our golden asset. And the will to live can supersede, various tools, physical tools, in fact. Just having that drive, that persistence is something that we really want to foster during a survival situation. The Navy SEALs here in the United States military has this system called the 40% rule. And this rule talks about when you feel like you're getting fatigued and you feel like you're hitting the wall, like you're running out of energy, that you're really just kind of at the end of what you can do at the moment. That in reality, you're only about 40% to your actual capacity. So they're saying, and this is what motivates a lot of the SEAL teams, that just because you feel fatigued doesn't mean you're actually not able to do anything. In fact, what they show is that there's about 60% reserve beyond that feeling of fatigue. And so this is something that we can all take and learn from, that just because you feel wiped out doesn't mean you actually are wiped out. Now, for obvious health concerns and reasons, you have to be mindful not to overextend yourself, especially if you don't want to pull a muscle or overdo it in the heat or cold, or, obviously there's things that can really hurt you. But they're just talking about, in general, people don't even push themselves even nearly as much as they can. So in this particular mindset here, for athletes and, of course, in survival situations, it's good to push your threshold a little bit. And that's why during periods of time that you're not having any kind of crisis, hopefully that's all the time, that to push yourself a little bit, either through exercise or through mind challenges, or even just taking a survival pack and going out in the woods and see how long you can carry that pack before you can't carry it anymore. So the mindset is a big thing here. And just like the will to live and to create your own internal hope, the mindset is really a set of beliefs that you come to a conclusion of. And it's so important to develop this mindset that you would have and need of how you're going to work through a real survival situation, instead of panicking and instead of giving in to fear and all the uncertainties, and instead of rambling in your mind and letting your mind run around real loose and get overly excited. Here are some things we can kind of look at. And it's first thing is you can break the larger problems down into smaller ones, more manageable problems. And so if we have a handle on a lot of little things that we can do, a lot of steps that we can do, activities and behaviors, and basically it's these things that we can actually overcome in small ways, then we can overcome larger problems. So these types of actions are going to be really helpful in the long term if we can actually approach them from a more simple form of thought. So break larger problems into smaller ones. The next thing is always look at your situation from different perspectives. And that's going to be during the day and at the night, when you're tired and when you're rested. And physically look at different problems. If it's something that's actual tangible, walk around it. Look at it from top to bottom, side to side. If you have a piece of paper and some kind of writing utensil, write down thoughts on it and just brainstorm different ways to maybe go about doing what you need to do. So this is important, even if it's just from a mindset perspective of looking at all your options of how to react to a situation. It's always better sometimes to pause, even though you want to get real angry and start screaming and yelling, even though you're just by yourself. There's a lot more you can do. Maybe you can conserve that energy. And yes, you're frustrated and angry, but does it really help to show it? Does it help to have a big pity party in the middle of nowhere in a desolate area when you're trying to survive? Probably won't. So maybe take all that pent up frustration and force it down and funnel it to your benefit. The next thing is always reevaluate your resources and reserves. Not just on what you think you can do, but what are the things around you that you can use to your benefit? Are there plants that you can eat? Are there trees that you can use for shelter? Are there animals running around the woods, for example, that you could hunt? How are you going to catch them? Are you seeing planes every so many hours flying by overhead? Is there a way to signal to them? You have to brainstorm about these things. The next thing is the will to live, as we said before, can outdo many so-called quote-unquote survival tools. And so you have to be your own survival tool, your own survival resource. And a lot of us have the means to do it. Even if we're not formally trained as a so-called bushman, survivalist, whatever, we have the opportunity to dig deep down and actually start to conceive of plans and formulate ideas that could benefit us. We can always be very ingenious if we allow ourselves. A lot of times we don't give enough credit to ourselves and our capabilities. So this would lead us into the next thing of creating a plan for longevity, a persistence, a drive. And this would include personal goals, things that we can work toward, things that we can evaluate and go, okay, that was successful and that wasn't. And you keep on doing the things that do succeed. And you keep building and building on your success. And one of the things that can help you persist and to drive you would be, memories, and especially of loved ones, and thinking about those people. While you don't want to dwell on it 24/7 because it can get depressing, and it can make you possibly feel hopeless because you're not with them. But if you bring them up every few hours and use them as a source of motivation, memories of loved ones, memories of things that you want to do when you get back, making plans, for example, of the things you're going to do when you get back home, and how you're going to overcome, and how you're going to think about how you overcame the things that you're going through now, and how it's not only doable, but it's certainly a reality that you will overcome this challenge. So future plans is going to be key. And also intermixing humor. Humor is such a big thing. Even if you're by yourself, to crack a joke every once in a while, or look around and find funny things that are in the trees or funny things that are running around. Maybe it's a goofy squirrel that has some really odd colorations, and you're not able to catch the squirrel for food, but you can still laugh at him because it's just doing goofy things. Maybe he's hanging upside down on a tree somewhere. And when you're doing all this is a good time to have rest and breaks. Take a break. Clear your mind. This is where meditation, if you're into this at all, meditation, even if you learn the most basic principles of just clearing your mind, which is a lot of what meditation is, just dumping the contents of your mind out and just sitting there in the most comfortable position with an empty mind and just sitting in quiet. And having a peaceful mind goes a long way on being more organized in your thinking, being more efficient in your thinking, and having more capabilities at your disposal because your mind is going to be better organized. Some people literally do this every morning when they wake up. They have a 5 to 10 minute little meditation session. And now, while there are some people who meditate on one thing, and it could be for religious reasons or it could just be for holistic reasons, there are a lot of people also who dwell on nothing. Their whole challenge is to just think of nothing for 5 to 10 minutes. And so what you do is you exercise the mind and you strengthen it. It's almost like an exercise. Well, it actually really is, but you can exercise the mind and have more control of your mind, which isn't a bad thing at all. So instead of being at the mercy of your fears and, a running mindset, you can slow your mind down and control it. So you can alter the mindset of your situation by the approach that you go and come from. And this is the thing about this. As hard as it is, just like we're talking about humor, for example, that to find humor in a situation that's potentially life-threatening. But if you have a lot of time and some of your basic needs really are fulfilled, or while you're trying to fulfill those basic needs, take a moment every once in a while and look around. Maybe you're stranded on a beach somewhere in the most beautiful place in the world. It won't feel so beautiful because you're in a survival situation. But maybe you're also in another place. Maybe you're in a deep jungle somewhere that's just full of beautiful, crazy things, tropical plants that you've never seen before. Take all this in and try to enjoy on some level. Try to be like, wow, even though you're in a crappy situation, you're not around crappy stuff. And maybe that appreciation of the environment will trigger another memory or trigger the ability to think more rationally about what the options you really have in front of you. Because a lot of times it's so amazing that in a lot of survival documentaries, they find out that some people were only a few miles from civilization or a community or a town or city, and they didn't even know it. And then some people die before they was within a couple miles of a main road, and they were walking in circles for days, and all they had to do was just find that road. Sometimes they didn't even know that there was resources of food and water that were just within a few feet of where they died, and they died of dehydration or food starvation. And so sometimes we're not even aware fully of what is even available around us. And so don't be afraid to explore your environment. You kind of have to if you really want to survive. We're so used to in the modern society of having everything handed to us. Not everyone, of course, is like this, but there's a vast number of people in first world countries that have become dependent on the infrastructure of society. More specifically, the social safety nets, if you will, especially here in the United States, I can speak of. I've heard about it also in Great Britain, but it's just horrendous. The social welfare is out of control. And while there's a lot of people who need help, and they can't always help themselves because of their situation, there's vast many more that can't help themselves, but they choose to go on the... Basically, they just choose to be helpless and to have other people support them. And so how can you respect yourself when you do that? It's got to be depressing. So you get to a point, though, that you want to carry your own weight, figuratively speaking, if you will. Maybe even literally speaking as well as also, you want to take care of yourself is what I'm saying. And you want to take care of yourself, and you are responsible for yourself. So how you go about your own survival is really your decision with your results. And you'll know if it's successful or not because you'll be living or not. And just remember, though, the resources around you is such a big ordeal. It's so difficult, though. I can imagine if you were stranded in the Arctic because your resources are extremely limited. Extremely limited. I mean, just trying to stay warm, trying to have food, could be a very difficult task. But there are people who live in the Arctic, and they have different means to do that living. And so they just use what they have. And so humans are very adaptable. So don't ever sell yourself short, especially if you're just stranded within a couple miles, or maybe you're just lost in a off. You got like a mile or two off of a path in a forest. Relatively speaking, that's not. It's scary, to be in that situation. But relatively speaking, it could be a lot worse. And so you have to just stop, try to backtrace where you came from the best as possible. And in some situations, it's good just to stay where you are. In fact, in most cases, if you know for sure someone knows where you went and you don't come back, if you really are worried that you're going to get yourself even more lost, then stay put. But if it's something that no one knows where you're at, and you need to self-rescue, you're going to have to actually do what we just talked about and go through that list of priorities of survival, of your needs, your essential needs, and different methodologies of continuing that struggle through survival, because it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to constantly say to yourself, oh my gosh, is this really happening? But just remember, the faster you come to the conclusion that it is real and you accept that you are in a real survival situation, the more that you can get beyond that and go, okay, now let's work on solutions. Just like, here in America, and I believe it's in other countries too, they had this thing called AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. There's another one called Narcotics Anonymous, and there's a whole bunch of different kinds of addictions and different types of groups to help that. But with AA and with a lot of the other ones, one of the first things that you have to do as part of their treatment steps is to accept that you have a problem, that you are basically out of control, and that you have to relinquish that ideology that you are in control, because in reality you're not, and the addiction is in control. So the moment you agree and you come to the conclusion and you accept that you need help, that's the first step to recovery. So can you imagine in survival, it's kind of have to be the same thing. The moment that you really realize that it's serious and you go, okay, it is serious and I recognize it, but what do I need to do something about it? That's when you start turning things around. As always, you guys take care. I'll catch you soon.